Dear Heavenly Father, today we come to you in humble prayer. We ask that the Holy Spirit fill us with the gifts of wisdom, understanding, counsel, fortitude, and knowledge. It is only through these gifts, Lord, that we can seek truth, find truth, and defend truth. Lord, we ask that you bless all those assembled here today. We thank you for our peaceful gathering, and we pray for a peaceful adjournment. We ask that you continue to provide a veil of protection over Pamela Geller and Robert Spencer, their friends and family. May their message reach those who need to heed its warning, and to those who have the authority and the responsibility to protect us from all radical threats. Father, we pray for our military both here and abroad. It is upon the shoulders of these brave men and women that we have placed our nation's mantle of freedom and protection. Give them the strength to accomplish their mission and the required safety that will bring them home again to their loved ones. And lastly, Father, we ask that you provide comfort and care to our brothers and sisters who have lost loved ones during the recent outbreak of storms that have raged across our land. May those affected by these unprecedented storms find fellowship and kind hospitality in the outreach of those who have been called upon to support them. May we continue to hear miraculous stories of survival, reunion, and love. We ask this in your precious name. Amen.
Amen.
I pledge allegiance
to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
You may be seated. Again, I want to thank you all for coming. It is such a privilege to be able to host our very special guest that we have today. But before we go into those introductions, I would like to say thank you to the chairman of Pinellas Patriots Sharia Law Committee, Larissa Scott. And all of those committee members that worked tirelessly on this event. Their courage and patriotism is to be applauded. We have two special guests today. The first is Robert Spencer. Mr. Spencer is the director of Jihad Watch, a program of the David Horowitz Freedom Center, and the author of 10 books, including the New York Times bestsellers, The Truth About Muhammad and The Politically Incorrect Guide to Islam and the Crusades. He co-authored with Pamela Geller the Post-American Presidency, the Obama administration's War on America, this book. If you don't have this, come to Haslam's today at 3:30 and purchase a copy. This information in this book is your need-to-know information regarding the Obama administration, jihad information, and what is happening in our country with regards to Islam infiltration. I invite you all to Haslam's after the event. I will use Mr. Spencer's own words to state his purpose and his philosophy, and I quote, "It is not an act of hatred against Muslims to point out the depredations of jihad ideology. It is a peculiar species of displacement and projection to accuse someone who exposes the hatred of one group of hatred himself. I believe in the equality of rights and dignity of all people, and that is why I oppose the global jihad. Those who make the charge of hatred use it as a tool to frighten the credulous and politically correct away from the truth." And if Mr. Spencer would stand, we'd like to thank you for being here this afternoon. Our second guest is Pamela Geller. She's the founder, editor, and publisher of AtlasShrugs.com. AtlasShrugs.com brings you the news you will not hear from the mainstream media, providing original reportage covering little reported events of great import, and giving an unblinkingly honest examination of global affairs. She is also the executive director of Freedom Defense Initiative and the Stop Islamization of America. and is a regular columnist for Andrew Breitbart's Big Government and Big Journalism, The American Thinker, and other publications. She co-authored with Robert Spencer the book, The Post-American Presidency, the Obama Administration's War on America. Ms. Geller has been marginalized and demonized by the political left, the mainstream media, and by a myriad of Muslim groups calling her a bigot and anti-Muslim. However, as Tea Party members have learned, if your opponents stoop to calling you names, it is concrete evidence that you are winning the argument and effecting change. Along with her quest to sound the alarm regarding the Ground Zero Mosque, Ms. Geller's single-focused ideal is this, and I quote, "I am more afraid of doing nothing, and that is much more frightening to me. It is not an issue of freedom of religion or speech, but an issue of human decency, human compassion. Just because you can do something does not mean you should do it." I present to you Ms. Pamela Geller.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you so much for coming out today on a beautiful day. I feel that the reason why you're in this room is because you are acutely aware that we are at war. We are at war in the information battle space. We are at war in the war of ideas. And each one of you is a soldier. Each one of you is your own media organization. You have to send out articles from Jihad Watch, from Atlas Shrugs. You have to organize. I want to tip my hat and I want Larissa Scott to take a bow. She organized the screen. She did everything. When Muslim terrorists took our passenger planes and turned them into missiles and flew them into buildings, I ask you, were those mothers and those fathers, those doctors and lawyers and waiters, were they our soldiers? Were they wearing uniforms? Yes, they were our soldiers. This is the war that we are in. And no one is going to save you. You are going to save you. Every morning that you wake up, you have to ask yourself, what am I going to do today to save the Republic? I know you're working, I know you have families, I know it's hard, but you have to do something. Whether it's going to something like this, whether it's emailing out my daily updates or Robert's daily updates, because the news on the global jihad you will not get from the mainstream media. The mainstream media has become the enemy. They are self-enforcing the Sharia. They will not criticize or defame or insult Islam. They will criticize me, they will criticize Robert, but they will not criticize Islam. Even if it's the truth, they're afraid. And so it is up to you. When you have this malevolent alliance, this leftist Islamic alliance that we're witnessing, it is up to us to make a difference. The reason why we made this film, I had no intention of making a film. I had held a rally on June 6th against the Ground Zero Mosque. The media was ignoring it. It was announced in December 2009. And thousands of people showed up. And I was going to put the speeches online. But the story began to unfold. The story began to arc. And it's very important that you see this film because when the media did start to cover it, was forced to cover it, what they did was shape the narrative. And it's been completely dishonest. 70% of the American people are against the Ground Zero Mosque, and yet 70% of the American people are racist, Islamophobic, anti-Muslim bigots. And that is patently untrue. This 15-story mosque, diabolically named Cordoba, period of history, where Muslim armies invaded Spain, a collection of Christian kingdoms, and Jews and Christians were forced to live under dimitude, denied basic human rights, the site of not one but two Jewish pogroms where thousands of Jews were slaughtered. in a building that was destroyed in the attacks on 9/11. It is offensive. It is deliberately provocative. It is a triumphal mosque. So I urge you to not only watch this today, but to get a copy. Have a screening in your living room. Invite your friends, make some martinis or not, whatever. But it's up to you. First, learn everything, and then educate. I'm going to turn the microphone over to my partner, Mr. Robert Spencer, and we'll have a Q&A afterwards. We'll talk at length.
Thank you very much for coming. Pamela said that this was a triumphal mosque, and this is indeed, as you will see in this film, the story of a triumphal mosque. Now, what is a triumphal mosque? In 636, when the Muslim armies entered Jerusalem, the Caliph Umar, one of the first things he did as the conqueror of Jerusalem was to begin construction of the Al-Aqsa Mosque, and later the Dome of the Rock was also constructed on the Temple Mount, on the site of the Jewish temple in Jerusalem. And that site was chosen deliberately in order to emphasize what Umar and his co-religionists considered to be the conquest of Judaism and the manifestation of Islam's superiority over Judaism. It was a triumphal mosque. There are two triumphal mosques on the Temple Mount. On Tuesday, May 29th, 1453, the Muslim armies entered Constantinople, which at that time was the most important city in the Christian world and the site of the grandest and largest cathedral in the Christian world, the Hagia Sophia. And the first thing that Mehmed the Conqueror did was get a muezzin, one of the Muslim imams who called to prayer, and enter the Hagia Sophia Cathedral. And he sent the muezzin up to the pulpit where he proclaimed there is no God but Allah and Muhammad is his prophet. And from that moment on, the Hagia Sophia Cathedral was the Hagia Sophia Mosque, and it was a manifestation of Islam's conquest of Christianity and demonstration of Islam's superiority over Christianity. This is a pattern that has happened throughout the Islamic world. All over India, there are mosques that were converted from Hindu temples or were built on the site of destroyed Hindu temples to manifest Islam's superiority and conquest of Hinduism. It is an absolutely common thing in the Islamic world. There are actually thousands of triumphal mosques all over the Islamic world. Now, when you see this film, you will see, and you may have already heard, that the Ground Zero Mosque is supposed to be something different. It is a mosque of reconciliation and peace and healing to send the opposite message from 9/11. And that's what the imam leading the charge has said. However, even if he were sincere in this, and you'll see abundant reason not to trust him in this film, but even if he were sincere in this, he is not the official spokesman for the Islamic world. He is not the one who sets the opinion for all Muslims. What will Muslims around the world understand that this mosque is? Are they going to listen to this imam in New York, or are they going to look around in their own towns, in their own cities, in their own countries, in their own historical experience, excuse me, and see how to understand this mosque in New York? There are thousands of triumphal mosques, and there are absolutely no mosques of reconciliation, peace, and harmony anywhere in the Islamic world, built on the site of an earlier jihad attack in order to reach out to the victims of that attack. That has never happened before in history. And if you believe it's happening in New York now, I have some lovely riverfront property I'd like to talk to you about. This is a story about the collusion of the media elites and the governing elites in enabling the triumph of the representatives of the most repressive ideology on earth. This is the story of a struggle for freedom in which every card in the deck is stacked against the warriors for freedom. But one thing we have on our side is truth, and another thing we have on our side is justice. And we're never going to give up, and we will prevail. So thank you all for coming, and we'll see you again at the Q&A after the show.
Wow. How many of you learned something new today? Did you honestly think it was this bad? No, I don't think any of us had any idea it was this bad. And victory mosques are not only going up in New York City, we have one in Sarasota by the flight school where some of the jihadists trained before they flew those planes into the World Trade Center. So it's not just happening in New York City, folks, it's happening in your backyard. And the more you can get the word out to your friends and your family about what is happening, not only with Triumph Mosque, not only Sharia law in our courts, but the glorification of Islam in our children's school books, and the downplaying of the importance of Christianity in our country in those same school books. There is a fight everywhere you go. You want to go to a city council meeting? Fight it there. You want to go to a county board of commissioners meetings and planning board councils? Fight it there. There is no stage that you can think of where this is not being infiltrated bite by bite. So we're going to have a question and answer session between our guests and you. If you would like to answer or ask a question, meet me where Larissa's standing. Wave your hand, Larissa. And we'll take as many questions as we can prior to 3:30.
Sure. I'd like to ask your permission to speak. I was told if I stood up and speak, I would be arrested. Do I have your permission to speak?
Of course.
Okay.
Ask the question.
Okay. All right. Thank you. I'm an activist too, and I enjoyed your film. I did. I had a couple of questions about it. As far as Sharia law goes, I've studied it quite a bit. And if it was to be implemented in America, in our court system, we would have to accept the jurisdiction of Sharia. Now, if you're in a court system and you don't accept the Sharia jurisdiction, you're not tried using Sharia law. So my question for you is, why is the threat of Sharia law so significant if in the court system we're allowed to reject the jurisdiction of said Sharia law if it was tried to be used against us?
We are seeing the imposition of Sharia law across the country. In the enacting hate speech laws, Israeli blasphemy laws. Yesterday in Pennsylvania, you had a judge adjudicating Sharia law. A man died and left the contents of his estate according to the Sharia. And you had a judge in Pennsylvania actually divvy up the man's assets and give 2/3 to his sons and 1/3 to his daughter. You had a judge in New Jersey who would not prosecute an estranged husband who had raped his wife because under the Sharia, that is not a crime. So we are seeing the imposition of Sharia laws across the country. And for me, of course, the great threat is in the restriction of free speech. Because I will tell you that if free men do not have free speech, they have to resort to violence. And free speech is what keeps us free. Because in the information battle space, as long as I can get my ideas out there, I know that I will win. I know that I am right. I know that I am telling the truth. I know this. But if you take that away from me, then the bullets and the bombs and the bloodshed has to follow. Because what goes on in this war, this information war, the bullets and the bombs come as a result of what happens. And I am very worried about the freedom of speech. I want Robert, I'm sure, to add to this. You have anything to add?
Oh, yeah. What you seem to be suggesting is that Sharia would come to the United States as a matter of private and voluntary arbitration after the manner of...
They would have to accept the jurisdiction.
After the manner of Jewish courts and Catholic marriage courts that are entirely voluntary for those who choose to participate in them and don't contradict civil law. The fundamental difference between Jewish law and Catholic law and Islamic law in this regard is that Islamic law asserts authority over non-Muslims in a way that Jewish law and the Catholic marriage law do not. And so there is an involuntary aspect to it that is not distinct from the aspects that are being pushed nowadays as being something that only involve marriage law and so on. And we already see this happening in Britain, where private Sharia arbitration courts have already been established, and Tony Blair and Jack Straw, at that time the Home Secretary, and other British officials assured the British public that there would be no contradiction between the implementation of private Sharia arbitration courts and the British criminal courts, and that anything that had to do with British criminal law would be referred to the criminal courts. And they almost immediately contravened that, and specifically started to refer spousal abuse cases to the Sharia courts rather than to the British criminal courts. Now, why is that a matter of concern to all free people? Because the Quran, as you well know since you've studied Sharia, mandates that a disobedient woman ought to be beaten. It says good women are obedient, and as for those that are not, admonish them, send them to separate beds, and beat them. That's Quran chapter 4, verse 34. Hold on. And so if you beat a disobedient woman, and that is actually a responsibility before God to do, then obviously a spousal abuse case is going to come out to the disadvantage of the woman in every case. And that is in absolute and 100% direct contradiction to British criminal law regarding spousal abuse. And so those kinds of cases should never have been referred to the Sharia courts. The problem is that no clear distinction is made, because the way in which these Sharia courts are being sold to the British public as well as to the American public is that it's a matter of private religious law, and that it doesn't infringe upon the other aspects of criminal law and the political realm, when actually Sharia does have aspects that have to do with politics, that have to do with the treatment of women and non-Muslims in ways that are completely at variance with American law and British law, and that deny the freedom of speech, as Pamela was saying, and the freedom of conscience, and so on. And so it's in so much contradiction to the U.S. Constitution, there is no distinction made between those elements that are contradictory and the elements that are supposedly innocuous, that to introduce any kind of Sharia compliance into American civil society is to open the door to the rest of it, and that is dangerous to our freedoms.
Just one other thing. I mean, if you look at Terry Jones, and I don't advocate book burning, I believe the antidote to bad speech is more speech, more give and take. But the fact that this man was not allowed to protest, okay, in America, the Nazis marched in a Jewish neighborhood in Skokie. Do we remember that? The Klan has marched. Why? Because the test of freedom of speech, listen, freedom of speech protects all ideas, not just the ideas that we like. You understand that? Because then who would decide what's good and what's forbidden? So we see it. It's a drip, 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 drip. That was clearly the Sharia, the restriction of Terry Jones being able to speak. And CARE, the Hamas-tied CARE, calling for the prosecution. They found a little rubber porky pig outside of a mosque. It said, remember 9/11. This was during the Ground Zero Mosque. They wanted that prosecuted to the full extent of the law. What law is that? Yes, sir.
Hi, my name is Robert King. I teach world religions, and one question I have is more of a pragmatic political question. How do we influence the proverbial quote-unquote white moderate who seems to always lean on the side of suppressing freedom of speech? What I found internationally, I'm a former Methodist minister, was that those who actually live in countries like Kenya, I have a clergy colleague in Kenya, where he literally had to abandon his home because he couldn't pay his Islamic landlord any longer. What he asked for was help from the West, and I said, well, do not give that money over to someone who will take over you. Just reconsolidate, and he did do that, I think, in Nairobi. And so he has a flourishing Pentecostal ministry now. Thank God for that. Yeah. What I've also found is those on the perhaps far, far left, who I completely disagree with politically, but nonetheless stand for freedom of speech, can oftentimes be great advocates. Former professor at Notre Dame, I was in the PhD program at Notre Dame. He's extremely liberal, I disagree with him, but he was also on the ground in the Sudan helping Christian refugees. And so my question is, what do we do about the white moderate who wants to suppress freedom of speech? Because that's what I see with all these Katie Couric folks in the media. That's who our greatest enemy is. That's right.
Yeah. Well, anyone that wants to suppress free speech, I don't care if they're purple, This is the enemy. And this is just something. This is something you have to fight for. I mean, why do they win? Because they're louder. Because they're more muscular. This is something we have to fight for. This is something we have to educate. We have to educate people. This is people assume their freedom. People are still living off the fumes of the greatest generation's victory in post-World War II America. These freedoms are being chipped away at every single day. And you have to stand up and you have to fight for them. Why do they win? You know, why do they win? As far as the Uber left, I know exactly what you're saying. It is rare. The Norman Siegels of the ACLU, it's more rare. The Uber left is the problem. The Uber left want to shut us up. And that's why they like the Sharia. And that's why they like Islamic supremacism, because the Sharia is absolute control of people. I mean, that's where I see the alliance. That's why they want the control. They always, look, if it wasn't, National Socialism, the Nazis, that was left, communism, Stalinism, whatever the totalitarian ideology of the day is, whatever the opposite of individualism is, whatever the opposite of individual rights, collectivists, whatever costume it's wearing, that's what they align themselves with. It's a war. It's individualism versus collectivism. It's individual rights versus statism. That is the war, period. And that's what you're fighting for. We are fighting for the smallest minority in the world. Who is the smallest minority in the world? The individual.
I would just add, this is not a racial issue by any means, and we have to be careful, I think, to avoid casting in that way, because it just hands ammunition to those who try to paint this as a matter of some sort of a racial conflict, when actually this is a struggle for freedom, that we are fighting against the most repressive ideology on earth, and we are fighting for free societies and free people. And so it is very important to keep that in mind. But I would only add to what Pamela said about why the alliance is that way, and why the media elites and the government elites are so eager to accommodate this repressive ideology. I think it's because of a tremendous sense of guilt that they have because of the success of the West and the flourishing of Western civilization and its influence all over the world, as well as a hatred for the West and America that they see shared by these Islamic supremacists, and so they make common cause on that basis.
Honor is self-esteem in action. Honor is self-esteem in action. It's incumbent upon you, every single one of you. You have to fight. That's all I'm going to tell you. Every one of you have to fight, and you have to teach your children, and you teach your friends, and all the friends of yours that say, listen, don't send me those emails anymore. Keep sending them.
Good afternoon. My name is Barbara Vaughn. I would like to hear each of you speak to the subject of abrogation and how it is so confusing when some people swear that the Quran is a book of peace and many of the rest of us know better. Thank you.
The concept of abrogation is founded on the Quran in chapter 2, verse 106, where Allah says, if we abrogate or cause to be forgotten a verse, then we will give you one that is just as good or better. And this was obviously something that is designed to manage contradictions, that Allah, for various reasons, changes what He teaches under various circumstances. Now, none of this would matter to anybody except Islamic theologians were it not for this fact. Anytime you could turn on the television at any given moment, and you will see, we saw a couple of those fellows in the movie, Muslim spokesmen saying Islam is a religion of peace, maybe quoting various passages of the Quran that teach tolerance and seem to be enjoining peace. Unfortunately for us as non-Muslims, there are three stages. Islamic theologians delineate these stages. This is something they say. I'm just quoting them or referring to what they say. They say there are three stages of development in the Quran's teaching on relationship between Muslims and non-Muslims. The first is tolerance, the second is defensive jihad warfare, and the third is offensive jihad warfare in order to establish the Islamic State and to subjugate non-Muslims as inferiors with institutionalized discrimination and denial of equality of rights under the rule of the Muslims. And these three stages are all in the Quran. But according to the principle of abrogation, what comes chronologically later in Muhammad's career cancels out or takes precedence over what comes earlier. And that is where it becomes very dangerous for us, because the offensive jihad stage is the last chronologically in the Quran. And so it takes precedence over the other two. But it also must be kept in mind, if you're going to understand abrogation correctly, that it doesn't mean that these stages that are canceled for all time. It may be in Islam, in the history of the Muslims, that the conditions that called for tolerance reappear. And that's what we actually see in the United States today, or have seen in the United States up to recently. That Muhammad taught tolerance when when the Muslims were a small group without political or military power in Mecca for the first 12 years of his career as a prophet. And then he started teaching warfare when he got to be the head of an army and the head of state. In America, thus, we have been in a period where the Muslims have been teaching tolerance because they're a small minority without political or military power. But that is changing, and it never takes precedence over the other two stages. Muslims must always be working to implement the other two stages, and they're coming. We're seeing that now with the very sharp uptick since 2009 of terrorist attacks and attempted terrorist attacks in the United States. And we're going to see more and more of it as time goes by. More aggressiveness, more assertiveness, more violence as they move into the second and third stages here.
You covered that one. There's a line in silence. So,
Okay.
yes.
Good afternoon, Dan Bernal, proud Pinellas Patriot in search of ground truth. Brief but three-part question. First, can you tell us the current status of the legal battles with Ground Zero Mosque? Second, Imam Adami, is he still the lead guy, and where has he been the last 3 years before he took over? Because I tried to search for him and couldn't find last 3-year history of him. And fourth, are you guys in open dialogue with like Peter King's hearings? You guys weren't invited to march, should have been. But do you guys have an open dialogue with Homeland Security, Defense, with our current leaders?
The mosque fight is ongoing. We have been very successful. We got rid of Daisy Khan and Imam Raouf. Adami is no longer the imam. They have not replaced the imam. They're now packaging it as a secular proposition. The Islam, yes, this is how they're selling it. It's all about Sharif al-Gamal, who's defaulting on bank loans, who's applying for taxpayer money. So we will continue to fight. This is not like a sitcom that it's over in 30 minutes and it's a happy ending. We will be there if they go to break ground. We'll be there, mommies and babies in strollers, and they'll have to pull us away. The police will have to take us away. We will not stop fighting this war. If you are in New York on the 10th anniversary of 9/11, we ask that you come down. We'll be protesting the mosque. We'll be memorializing our loved ones who died. We'll be fighting against Durban 2, Durban 3, who's coming to New York at 9/11, which is a racist Islamic supremacist conference. So we'll continue to fight. That was the first question. The second question was, Dunleavy's gone, and the third one, well, listen, we felt that Peter King, look, it was absolutely a good idea. We stand with Peter King. Having Keith Ellison there, why? They don't have enough of a podium. They don't have enough of a media. Why give this Muslim Brotherhood proxy, whose Hajj trip was paid for by the Muslim Brotherhood, okay? Why give him the opportunity to get up there and lie about a story that never happened, okay? And cry, and that's all you saw on the 6 o'clock news. Why? Why? You didn't see Bledsoe. You didn't see the Muslim parent whose son was radicalized, or the father of the Somali father whose nephew and 20 other young Muslim boys went to Somalia for jihad. You never heard that on the evening news. I did not agree. There are Ibn Warwick, Wafa Sultan. I mean, look, if you're going to do a hearing and you're going to take a ton of garbage for it, you're going to take a ton of garbage no matter what. Do it right. Do it right. I mean, I don't know if you want to add to this.
No, not really. It was a missed opportunity, that's all. King, in other words, allowed himself to be cowed. He took an awful lot of negative publicity, but he seemed to fold to it. And that's what you must never do. You know, if you start to fight in this, as we are urging you to do, they're going to call you horrible things. They're going to dig up anything they can on you. They're going to try to destroy you. You must never let them get to you 1 inch. You must never be cowed. You must never be intimidated. You must never give an inch. But Peter King did. If you don't know Keith Ellison that Pamela's talking about, he's the Muslim congressman, one of the 2 Muslim congressmen in the House of Representatives. And King called him as his main witness, and he started weeping about this Muslim who was killed on 9/11 and supposedly had been identified as a terrorist while he was missing, and he was actually killed. None of this actually happened. He was killed on 9/11, but nobody ever really called him a terrorist or was suspicious of him at all.
He was lauded by the president.
Right.
He's family, he got awards, but I'm just saying, it's not just a lie, it's an egregious lie.
And even if all that did happen, the way Ellison said, it doesn't take away the reality of jihad recruitment in mosques in the United States and the Islamic supremacist initiatives here. And so to give him a platform and to not only not call us, that's not sour grapes, he doesn't have to call us, but he didn't call Steve Emerson, who's the leading authority on jihad terror networks in the United States.
He disinvited,
There were so many people. He disinvited Ayan.
Ayan Hershey Ali. I mean, once you cave, that's it. They're going for the kill.
Even Molly Norris, that cartoonist that I identified in the movie, that fatwa was issued on her head after she retracted the contest, the Muhammad contest. As soon as you express any weakness, they smell blood and they go in for the kill. You must never, ever back down. Ever.
Incredibly moving, and on that point, could you clarify that last paragraph, what occurred on February 20th, 2011?
Oh, yeah.
We have been showing the movie with 9/11 families. They're not here today because it's expensive and they can't leave their families. Some have young children. But one of the other fights that we're involved in is the 9/11 Memorial and Museum. The 9/11 Memorial and Museum, there are so many egregious things connected to this particular Memorial Museum, but let me tell you the worst of it, okay? First of all, the 9/11 Memorial Museum is going to be 7 stories underground. Nothing above ground to the victims, nothing. And there are, I don't know, it's over 1,000, is it 1163? Human remains that have been unidentified. They are taking the human remains of the 1,100 people, over 1,100 people, and they're putting it behind a wall in the museum. And they're charging admission. The 9/11 family members are beside themselves. Because this is another thing that they do. They've been talking all along about the human remains. Now the 9/11 families were under the impression that they were going to put something like a tomb of the unidentified. Sort of like a tomb of the unknown, but it's not unknown. You know, you just don't know which is which. Above ground. And that they supported. But a sideshow? A freak show? So I encourage you, it's at my site, but if you don't know where to look, just Google Mayor Bloomberg, contact, and write to him. There's still time to get this changed. But that is, and of course there's going to be a room to the terrorists. There's going to be a room there for the 9/11 terrorists. And yes, Daisy Khan, who's on the advisory council of the 9/11 Memorial and Museum, to make sure the Muslim perspective is represented. It's out. And by the way, the people in charge of this, Joel, I forget his last name, they're getting well over $300,000 a year that they've raised on the backs of the American people, because most people, when they hear, oh, we're raising money for the 9/11 Memorial, people are like, oh, who do I give you the check to? You're paying for that. And children are doing bake sales for this stuff. It's outrageous. And people don't know about it. Every time we show this movie, people don't know about it.
How about the statue in Battery Park?
You mean the sphere, right? Yes, we're working on getting that moved there as well, too. Everything the 9/11 family members requested was... You know what the attitude is with the 9/11 families? Truthfully, they're like, look, you got your money. Now get along. It's really true. It's outrageous.
What's really outrageous is that room that you said.
Yes.
That's terrible. That's like putting John Wilkes Booth's room alongside of the Lincoln Memorial.
The 9/11 family members should have a say of also with human remains of their loved ones. It doesn't become an attraction. It doesn't become an attraction at the 9/11 Memorial. Human remains.
Hi,
My name is Brooke, and I just wanted to say thank you to both of you for coming today. It's very enlightening what I watched today, although I have been, I try to self-educate about this, and have read a lot of books, and I'm looking forward to reading your new one. I would also like to make a quick statement. I would just like to say thank you for all the prayers for the victims of the tornadoes in the South. My family and a lot of close friends were very devastated. We've lost lives and complete homes. But if you do not believe in the power of God, what I would like to say to you today is, I talked to a very good friend this morning. All three of her siblings' homes and her parents' homes were hit. No lives were lost, but this is the power of God. Within a 3-foot circumference in every one of those homes, the only thing that was left was maybe a 3-foot circumference where they were sitting, holding hands, and praying together. That is a testimony to the power of prayer that this country is to stand up and not back down. I'm a young Christian, and I have very good Jewish friends. I have some Muslim friends. But what I can say is they think that the bigotry and the hatred is against the Islamic religion. As a young Christian in today's society, I am so castigated. It is unbelievable. The people of my age, when they realize that I'm a very proud Republican card-toting citizen of this country, you cannot believe the things that they say to me. I know. And
well, they know that you're not going to hurt them.
You know.
But you see, everybody's standing up here. Everybody has to have guards. You must have seen that. Builders had guards. Anna's Gravis had guards. We have to have guards. I mean, just so that you know. But they don't need guards. I mean, Daisy Khan came out with that suddenly, that her life was threatened. She doesn't have a clue. I mean, NYPD picks up a file from me this thick every month. I found that particularly galling, that nobody even, and it was on the front page of every newspaper the next day, New York newspaper. Oh, she's getting threats. There was no proof. We never saw, I mean, maybe it's just a heavy breather. You know, maybe it's just an obscene phone caller. Hubba hubba. I mean, I'll show you letters and I'll show you emails, and I'm serious. That was taken on faith, just on faith.
I do just have one quick question. In regard, I just wanted to get both of your take and your opinions on in what's going on today in the Middle East. Egypt, Syria, Libya, all over with the uprisings and the civil movements and the wars, and now America has sent troops and arms and everything. What do you feel, or what is your opinion about what of this has to do with the jihadist movement, and what should America's stance be in all of this?
It has everything to do with the jihadist movement. It's a very scary time, very, very dangerous, particularly because we have a president who has abdicated. And when he does decide to get involved, it's always on the side of the enemy. Always. What are we doing in Libya? Seriously, why Libya? Why blood and treasure in Libya? I ask you, the oil goes to Europe. And now listen, I'm not advocating for Gaddafi. There are no heroes in this particular war. But strategically, okay, if you're going to send in boys, if you're going to send money, if you're going to support, the fight, the right fight, was in June 2009 in Iran, when millions of people took to the street, and not just men yelling Allahu Akbar, okay, because that's what we're witnessing now, but women with hijab and not hijab and eyeliner and lipstick and children and Zoroastrians and Persians, everybody. And that would have cut off the head of the snake. Iran is the head of the snake. Iran is Hamas, Iran is Hezbollah, Iran is agitating in Bahrain, Shia against the Sunni government. In Egypt, they're aligned with the Muslim Brotherhood. I mean, what was that about? What was throwing away our ally with both hands for what? So the Muslim Brotherhood could ascend, now calling for the annihilation of Israel? It's horrible, because the leader of the free world is advocating for the jihad. And Israel really is alone. And whatever your thoughts about Israel, I can tell you right now, you have no idea how much she absorbs in terms of jihad. How much she fights, what a bulwark she is against jihad.
We're going to have to end the question session. If you would like to have a few moments to speak with Pamela and Robert Spencer, they're going to be sponsored by Haslam Bookstore immediately after, and that address is 2025 Central Avenue, just a few short blocks from Baywalk. Thank you very much, and let's give a hand
And I want to thank Melissa Scott, the new director of SIOA Florida, a newly created position. Congratulations.